All right, looking at Titus chapter 1, verse 11 in the Greek, and then we'll look at it in the NASB. Hous de epistomidzein hatenes halus oikus anatrepusin didaskantes ha me de iskru kerdus karen. Looking at it in the New American Standard. Who, so we have a relative pronoun right here connecting back to something previously, which we'll touch on in a second. Who must be, or it is necessary, and then infinitive, to be silenced. Who must be silenced. And then you'll note that NASB has because inserted here. It links, it highlights both they and because it's really only coming from that hatenes word there. So they're supplying the because and understanding that there's a kind of a causal explanation being given here, but that is being supplied. So hatenes, in English, NASB, because they are upsetting whole families, or oikus being households, whole families, teaching things they should not teach for the sake of sordid gain. So that's New American Standard 95. So we'll break this up into some chunks, the first three words here, and then the next one here. So hous is that kind of resumptive element to the pronoun. It's a pronoun standing for something previously, likely the polloi above. So the many, it's picking up on the idea of there are many and everything that entails goes along with those many mentioned previously. So there are many, and this is in the accusative case. So we're going to be thinking this is likely in the objective case. Day, that's going to be similar to the day that we saw show up in verse 5, I believe. Nope, correction. Verse 7. There we go. Day, where we have the present active indicative third person singular day, which kind of means it is necessary. So typically you're going to supply a subject, which is kind of like an implied it. It is necessary. Well, what is necessary? And then you have the complement there. And as with verse 7, where you had the infinitive for this overseer to be, it is for them to be silenced. So verse 11, we have to silence them, present active infinitive. So it is necessary upon stilts epistomidzein, to silence who? To silence these many that are talked about above. So the hous. So it is necessary to silence them. And then the implied because, but it's almost like he skips over the because in bringing over the accusation of what they're doing. Certain ones, hatenes, or whoever, there's a bit of a range with this one. Whoever, whatever, the idea is a little bit broad there, but it could also be translated they. So like it's necessary to silence these ones, these certain ones who are. So you could have it be simply they, or they / certain ones. Certain ones, and then here's the verb, anatrepusin. It's the idea of upsetting here. So this hatenes is the subject for this verb. And this whole clause that we're working on now is likely also modifying the polloi above. So it's connected to the many. And it's giving us an explanation of who they are, further describing what sort of people we're dealing with here. It could also be, as NASB kind of has it, the because, giving a reason for the silencing. or a reason for why it's necessary. So it's either a reason for why it's necessary, a reason for why they must be silenced, or a further explanation just of the character of the many that must be silenced. These many, these ones who are almost the idea of apposition there, whereas you have what Paul is giving here in these green brackets, or not red brackets, could be standing in the place of the many that need to be silenced. So there are many who are upsetting. What are they upsetting? We have the accusative case, halus, whole or entire, and then oikus, households or families. So not just are they tearing apart families, they are upsetting whole families. They're turning these things upside down. They're unsettling, upsetting households, which again, if you think through the context in verse 10 of they're proclaiming the need to return to the law, and this is upsetting the faith and disturbing the peace of believers. So they're upsetting whole households, and it says exactly how they're doing this in the following verse, explaining how they're doing this upsetting. Didaskantes, teaching, participle there, P-E-T-C, participle if you just highlight over the teaching piece there, you see present active, participle, plural, nominative, masculine. So they are teaching, and then the ha, things, is the idea translated here, or what, ha. This is a relative pronoun again. Teaching what ought not to be taught. So what it is necessary. Again, day shows up. It is necessary. What it is necessary not be taught, or what not should be. The ice crew is the idea of dishonest here. So basically this is teaching what they should not, dishonest, gain, and then Karen is, again, we saw Karen show up earlier in verse 5, tutu Karen, for the, I'll just scroll back up to it. So in verse 1, for this reason, Karen, tutu, for this reason. Again, Karen is a preposition that actually shows up afterwards. So this is a preposition that actually shows up as a postposition. So for the sake of, or for this reason, or for the reason of. For the reason of gain. What kind of gain? Dishonest gain. Or as the NASB puts it in a rather archaic language, sordid gain. And the idea with that is shameful or disgraceful or dishonest, improperly acquired gain. So they're teaching false things. They're teaching things that are not true, and they are doing so in a way that upsets whole families. And they're doing this for the sake of what they get out of it. Again, the reason, that driving purpose, is for the sake of dishonest gain. And there's some interesting connections, even just verbally here, seeing Karen show up at the end of this passage in verse 11, but then also seeing it show up right at the beginning in verse 5. This Karen functions to kind of bracket what is necessary. So Titus has been left on Crete for this purpose, and then there are those on Crete that are functioning for this purpose. So where Titus is left with the purpose of identifying and equipping and appointing godly men who will shepherd the flock, not for the sake of dishonest gain. Here we have, concluding verse 11, this idea of Karen, again, for the sake of dishonest gain. And again, day is showing up in multiple places here also. So there's some callbacks to the previous verses that are really tying all of these things together tightly and showing a sharp contrast between the opposition Titus is facing on Crete with the godliness and the character required of those that are going to be shepherding God's flock there. So that is Titus chapter 1, verse 11.